The global communications firm Edelman is out with its 20th anniversary Trust Barometer, and here to talk about that is the CEO of Edelman, Richard Edelman himself. It's great to have you here. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be here.
Lots to dig into here, and I guess one of the big takeaways is that more than half of the people you surveyed, half of the 34,000 people you surveyed, believe capitalism in its current form does more harm than good in the world. How is that?
So fears have eclipsed hope. And the fears include downward economic mobility and a loss of social status. Literally 83% of people told us they're afraid of losing their job in the next decade to automation, globalization, or immigrants. And there's a real sense of unfairness. The mass class divide is the largest we've ever seen. And it's in countries we've never seen it in before. So happy Canada and Germany, Saudi Arabia has a 21-point gap between the elites and the mass population. So these are all signals that the system isn't working for most people.
And right, this is a global look because you surveyed people through 28 different countries. Yeah. And another trend you saw here is that people are trusting business more than they are other institutions. And I'm curious why that is.
So it's the first time that business is the most trusted institution in the world. We've done this survey starting after the battle in Seattle in 1999. And so NGOs have always been top of the charts. Business has done this because you start to see action, not words. It's not just social responsibility, it's changing how business is done. And so you see examples of Microsoft with Satya Nadella, or Doug McMillon at Walmart, or Unilever making a big commitment on cutting back virgin plastics, and Alan Jobe out front making that very important pledge. So that's the change.
Very recently, of course, Larry Fink of Blackrock announcing they're going to look at more environmentally sustainable type investments and dump some of the investments they have that are harming the environment.
Well, it's very consistent with what the Business Roundtable agreed in August. 185 American companies have signed on to actually make stakeholder, not shareholder, the first thing. And Fink's very passionate missive yesterday was very clear about the risk of environment and to companies and to cities, and that it's a new level of risk for his investments, and he's going to have funds that are very clearly targeted to this new mentality of consumers and employees.
Back to the idea of capitalism as it stands needing to change. You've got Mark Benioff, co-CEO of Salesforce, Ray Dalio, the big hedge fund guy, coming out publicly recently and saying it has to be a more fair system. So it seems as though that's seeping into the public attitude.
I think that's correct. The idea somehow that business is competent isn't enough. It also has to have ethical behavior. And we've actually found in our research that only a quarter of trust is conferred by your ability to do your job. It's now 3/4 tied to, are you sustainable? Are you an ethical employer? Are you, one way or another, involved in job retraining and paying fair wages? These are new demands on business.
Which companies do you think have done a good job of that?
Starbucks taking out straws from the cups. Kevin Johnson, the CEO, also committing to hiring veterans and opportunity youth. Unilever making, again, a commitment to sustainability. Walmart. And these companies have really led in category and changed the rest of the way that business looks at the world.
Another surprise, or perhaps not, depending on how you're looking at this, a third of the countries no longer rank technology as the most trusted institution, but I guess that's to be believed with all the data privacy issues that we've been seeing, especially with companies like Facebook.
So again, for as long as we've been doing this survey, tech has been the #1 industry. And now you start to see a diminution of trust on the basis of concerns about the new forms of technology. Artificial intelligence, for instance, is not a proven to be good kind of idea. If it's monitoring people in the street, and do I have a choice in that? And is my data actually my own? And is it safe? These are issues that technology companies have to welcome government in. This is a key finding of the report, that people expect a partnership between government and business. Business is 50 points more trusted for competence than government. However, Government is twice as trusted about fixing issues like sustainability and income inequality and privacy. So it has to be like a seesaw. You have to have kids of equal weight to make it a fun exercise in the playground. So that's what business and government have to figure out.
Getting back to the way people now seem to be trusting business more than any other institution, more and more they're also expecting a lot from their company's CEOs to sort of lead the way in terms of change.
A stunning 92% of people told us, I want CEOs to speak up on the issues of the day, from LGBT to privacy to sustainability. And 75% said CEOs should lead their companies and not wait for government on these key issues. So move ahead. So actually the reason for this is that trust has actually become local. That, in fact, it used to be in the Moses model from the mountain down. Then it moved 10 years ago because of the rise of social platforms to horizontal, to peer-to-peer. Now, in the last year or two, it's moved to local. People close to me, a person like myself, a fellow employee, colleague, and my CEO. So my employer is 20 points higher than business in general.
What are some names of CEOs that come to mind when you think of those who sort of put themselves out there on the front lines and been very vocal?
No, Jamie Dimon's a perfect example. He's the one who pushed, along with Alex Gorski of J&J, this idea of the Business Roundtable endorsing stakeholder. And Jamie's also put money where mouth is in Detroit, for example, in getting his people as well as the bank to invest in renovating public structures, making funds available for entrepreneurs who want to go into Detroit and have a 10-year horizon for investment instead of 3-year.
What about how people view the inequality gap? Is that getting wider, and is it more prevalent in certain countries?
So we have the happy parts of the world and the more concerned parts. So it's really a developed versus developing, but importantly, the countries that have autocracies are the most trusted.
Okay.
And that's not a good message
No.
for the world. So in fact, what we observe is that the mass class divide has metastasized. It's gone from the US, UK, and France, which were the leading edge of this 4 years ago, to now into other countries in Europe, Germany, for instance, but also really into developing markets, India, China, now to start to see double-digit gaps between the mass and the class. And this starts to have, wait a minute, this is now transversal. This is not just a developed market phenomenon. This is general concern about unfairness.
You touched earlier on 83% of respondents saying they actually fear losing their jobs. I found this surprising, especially, at least I can speak for us here in America. We've got low unemployment at a 50-year low. We've got a booming stock market, a strong economy. What are some of the reasons why people are afraid about losing their jobs?
It's a trust paradox. For the prior 15, 18 years, we saw that the model that was proposed in the early 90s about upward economic mobility and tied to a strong legal system was the determinant of trust. So rising GNP more or less indicated that a country would be trusting. It's now no longer that. In fact, we see for the first time that it's tied to income inequality. And the big gap in trust for institutions is for government. If there's high inequality, there's low trust in government. And that's because government is seen as just being unable or unwilling to fix it. And so why are people concerned about job loss? They're concerned because they go into their CVS store and they see a place with no clerks. And they're foreshadowing a change in the retail environment and also in financial services where jobs are definitely going to be replaced by machines. And so are we going to retrain? This is the existential question of the next decade for business. Retraining is a necessity if 40% of the jobs, according to McKinsey, are going to be shifted one way or another because of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. We have a responsibility, both moral and practical, to retrain people.
And you ask that of the survey respondents, and the majority of them believe that burden lies on business to retrain their workers for sort of the next job.
But here's the amazing thing, 80% say that's so,
Yep.
but only 30% believe business is going to do it. And that's what we have to fix. If we want to be seen as a trusted leading institution, business actually has to put this on as a responsibility. Work with government, get community colleges to a good place, get tax breaks from government to do that kind of retraining. Work with local NGOs to get people in who maybe don't even have jobs at the moment. So this is this is the big opportunity. Also, fair pay. And
you asked that as well in the survey.
And again, 80% say we want business to do it. Only 30% believe they will do it. And I want to give big shout out to Taco Bell because last week they said that they were going to put a $100,000 salary for a store manager who was presently making $60K, and that will raise all the boats in the industry.
Yeah, we have to hope. This is your 20th year doing this, right? Kind of went by like a blink. You're right, 20 years ago, and I'm sure you've seen lots of trends during that time. What are some of the big takeaways for you?
So the most important trends are dispersion of authority, that you move from a top-down model of government officials and CEOs towards a more dispersed, individuals, peers. Then we also saw a real rise of business, decline of government since the last decade because of the impasse in Washington, impasse in Brussels over Greek debt, et cetera. And lastly, we saw the battle for truth, which has a lot to do with your business. 75% of people actually feel that they don't get quality information anymore. They're worried about fake news, and they feel as if the media has become politicized and that opinion and fact are too combined. And so the media becomes an essential partner in the future 10 years if we're going to have quality decisions.
You think there's reason to be optimistic about the next 20 years of this barometer, this trust barometer of yours?
I do. I feel that business is the catalyst for change. It can't do it on its own, but business definitely has the bit between its teeth and is dragging the sled and recognizing that in the future, prosperity is only going to work if it works for all, and that there is going to have to be operational change, not cosmetic change.
And an overwhelming number of people looking to the CEO to make that charge. Richard Edelman, thanks so much for these insights. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.